A lot of people are talking about what I am with the BRICS and with the new yuan settlement into gold, but I've heard no one talk about Lavrov's comment that they're opening it up to non-BRICS nations with the exception of the pound, the euro, and the dollar. Well, to me, that's about as big as it gets because that hits at the heart of the naysayers who say they're not big enough. Yeah, they are.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for July 8th through July 15th, 2025, while supplies last. First this week, we have 90% constitutional junk silver at spot price. That's right, no premium at all, just spot. Next, backdated 1-ounce platinum eagles are only $249 over spot. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're delighted to have this returning guest. Andy Schectman is here live with me at the Rural Symposium on Natural Resource Investing in Boca Raton, Florida. Andy, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Good to see you, Don, again. Thanks for having me, my man.
And I better get the date right today.
You got it right.
It's today. I didn't, because today is July 9th, 2025. The reason I got that right is because it's our wedding anniversary, so I better...
You know, the first year I was married, and I am married on Pearl Harbor Day. Of all days, the day that'll live in infamy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I forgot the day that would live in infamy, and that was 25 years ago. She's never let me live it down, so do not mess that one up.
Yeah, well, it's been a challenge because our wedding anniversary overlaps with the Rural Symposium, so here we are again, and we're taking in the amenities here, which are considerable, at the Boca Raton in Boca Raton, Florida, and that's not too far from where you've relocated to.
It's my backyard, and our new office is just a few miles from here too, in our new studio, which is finally completed.
Yeah, we got a chance to take a look at it, I think, on our recent last week's interview. So thanks for.
Well, it's even better now because that was done on a computer on the table, not the actual cameras and stuff. So it's only going to get better. But
cool.
It's cool. It's nice. It's nice to be able to do an interview without my dogs barking and someone knocking on the door and kids screaming. But
well, your dog is one of the favorite members of your team.
Yeah, I get that a lot. And every time I will say, stop it, I'll get comments like, be nice to your dogs. I'm a dog guy, but anyways, it's nice to have my own studio, but it's good to be here too. This is the one conference that I wouldn't miss. The quality of the speakers, but really just a shout out to Rick Rural, who's been instrumental in my success. For over 25 years, I've worked with his clients when he was at Global Resource and then the CEO of Sprott, and now at Battle Bank. He's an amazing guy. He's done a lot for me, and I would always be at this show. But the quality of the presenters, the quality of the speakers, the content is second to none. I also noticed Jay Martin was here from the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference. Those are the two that I wouldn't miss. So for any of you who are thinking I need to go to a show or I want to go to a show, whether it be physically attending or live streaming, those are the two that I would spend my own money on. And so it's good to be here, and it's good to see you in person.
And thank you, and great to be here with you too, because even though we live only, 3.5 hours apart, we don't get to see each other that often. So
it's a big state, and it is nice to see you, and I always cherish the time that we do get to spend together. So yeah, likewise.
And you've gave a sponsored lunch yesterday, and you're going to be on the main stage tomorrow.
Yep, I am.
And we're hoping that you can give our audience kind of a sneak peek of what you're talking about there. Some of these themes are probably ones that you've addressed with us before.
Yeah, I talk with you so frequently that I often will let you know what I'm thinking. The whole premise of, Daniela DiMartino Booth was on the stage, and she somewhat poo-pooed the BRICS. I think she got into a little bit of a tussle with James Rickards later after that because he looked the other way. I figured that no, that's not the case. The theme of my presentation is that the BRICS are more dangerous than ever. And dangerous might not be the right word, but I think they're becoming more legitimate than ever. The crux of what I was talking about, it centers around the development that we saw a couple weeks ago where the Shanghai Metals Exchange came out and said we are going to internationalize our are exchanged by a series of multi-jurisdictional hubs around. The first one in which is under construction right now in Hong Kong, the next one in Saudi Arabia, and then a set of contracts has already been put in place to build these exchanges or these depositories all around the Belt Road, through Africa and through Asia, ultimately into South America. And you look at some of the other exchanges that just have come to rise, like in Singapore. We see the growing sentiment of not only the Shanghai Exchange, but the exchange in Dubai. We're going to have an exchange in Moscow that's going to gain prominence. You're going to have an exchange with the BRICS. The whole idea and their announcement that the yuan is now convertible into gold on the Shanghai Exchange using that moment exchange rate for yuan, not converting into dollars, but for yuan. In other words, the yuan is being internationalized, and they came out and said this. So you can see the chess pieces are being put into place where they're going to internationalize yuan and trade it over their bridge platform, which they announced as well. 3 weeks ago, they made the announcement that the renminbi cross-border payment system, which is mBridge, has been integrated and already fully operational with 11 countries in Southeast Asia, the Asian countries, and 5 in the Middle East, which at present time represents nearly 40% of global GDP. I think 38% was the exact number. So you got those countries. And then you have the BRICS, but then you have the Belt Road and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Each one of those two organizations alone account for, the SCO accounts for 50% of human population, 35% of global GDP. Now, there is some crossover in the Belt Road, which is 70% of human population and about 50% of global GDP. You can add in other organizations like the Asianic countries I mentioned, the Eurasian Economic Union, like Kazakhstan and Russia. There's crossover. But all of these entities are closely aligned with the BRICS. They're not in the BRICS, but all closely aligned. And the whole premise of what I am talking about is that, first and foremost, the mistake the people in the West make is they think in terms of seconds and days. You can see these are very strategic moves that are being made to open a series of multi-jurisdictional branches of the Shanghai Metals Exchange and others that aren't directly correlated with Shanghai Metals Exchange, but they're all connected. And the premise is that every one of the countries where these exchanges are built will all deposit little bits of gold in all of the exchanges. So I put some gold in here, and everyone does that. So the gold is not held in one jurisdiction by one player. And that way, any imbalances, whether it be once a month or once a quarter, is settled in gold and will ultimately be in various jurisdictions. So the pieces are being put into place. Now, when you think about the Belt Road, when you think about Shanghai Cooperation, when you think about all of these groups, the Asianic countries, Middle Eastern countries that aren't in BRICS, it's substantial. And the one pushback that people like Daniela make is that they're not legitimate enough. They're a sideshow. They're not big enough. Sergei Lavrov, I think, really upped the ante when a couple weeks ago he came out and said, after it became evident that the primary thrust of Brazil, Brazil's holding, in fact, it's today that the meetings are going on, yesterday and today, I believe, was that they want to develop a new payment system independent of SWIFT. That's what this is. But Lavrov came out and said, well, that's what they want to do. Great. We're going to open up this new technology to non-BRICS members. However, it's not compatible with the pound, the dollar, or the euro. So they're keeping the West out, but now put it in context of what I just said with the Belt Road, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Asianic countries. If they are all involved and closely aligned with the BRICS and the BRICS nations, but not BRICS, and they are going to open this payment system up, which allows for payment in local currencies, which only strengthens one another's economies and their own system rather than converting to dollars, making the trade, going back from dollars to the other currency. You got 4 conversions back and forth, and all of this time. This new bridge platform settles in 7 seconds, not 3 to 5 days that SWIFT does. This new platform has a 98% reduction in fees. All of this stuff put into play, and then think about the size and scope of opening this up to non-BRICS nations is enormous. And all of a sudden, you have something that can very quickly challenge not only the settlement status of the dollar, but the reserve status, because what gold is doing in all of these vaults is not replacing the dollar, it's replacing what stands behind the dollar. It is the skeletal system, these vaults, of a whole new infrastructure, monetary infrastructure, and gold will take the place of treasury bonds. That is what, in my mind, it is doing. It is backing with legitimacy. The whole thing in the United States done again is that once we left the gold standard in 71, we were a system based on trust. And for a long time, we were trusted and revered. And you could argue the last 4, 5, 6 years, that level of trust is waning. And I think the world has gotten tired of promises of a country that won't get its fiscal house in order, that continues to go around bullying. You know, Trump says, you nations who do this with the BRICS, another 10% tariff. That's not a tariff, that's a sanction. This is what's pushing them all together to begin with. So I think Lavrov's comments are massive. If they do open this up to all of these other countries, you're talking 90+% of human population that will have the ability to trade outside the SWIFT system and settle in gold through a series of multi-jurisdictional vaults. To me, it's the biggest news that's come out of the BRICS maybe since day one, since I started covering it. I'm not hearing it anywhere, which is kind of strange to me. You're hearing a lot about the new settling in yuan and the multi-jurisdictional, but put it in the context of the BRICS, it's massive because it gives them legitimacy that they won't find with just having 10 or 12 or 15 countries. You now are talking about 160 countries, 170 countries. You're talking the majority of the world. And that should be factored into the equation and not, I think, overlooked.
One of the things you implied but didn't really hammer on there was the freedom from punishment by the U.S. You said the U.S. bullies, and that's as close as you got to it. What do we know, or what do we think, or what do you imagine about, okay, so what the world reserve currency is not supposed to be used as a weapon against other countries. It's supposed to be used for trade settlements. But here, this notion of distributed depositories, do you interpret that to mean there's some kind of trying to overcome that trust factor in terms of, look, you're going to not just have like China as the gatekeeper back guarding the hordes of metal, and me might never get locked. You might get locked out just the way you get locked out of SWIFT if it were not distributed in this manner.
Yeah, it's like having it all. Look at the Bank of England held the gold of Venezuela. Nope, can't have it. Sorry. Now, again, and I use the United States in this context. First of all, when you have the Bridge Settlement Network, MBridge, it's instant auditing, it's instant settlement, and it's instantly verifiable transparently. Think of what Zoltan Pozsar said, transparency in commodities. This is a marriage between blockchain technology and commodities and gold. Having it held in multi-jurisdictional locations with every country spreading their gold amongst those jurisdictions is genius, because it does take the trust out of it, and it's verifiable, and it's transparent. And that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Having it held in one location, you end up making the wrong choice by partnering with the wrong side, and you get locked out of your assets. And that's Venezuela would make that choice. And it's not for us as the world reserve currency to determine that. You know, and I always go back to Iraq. We're there 22 years later, and ask the people in the Middle East if it was justified destroying their country, toppling their regime, and didn't find the weapons that they said were there, and they're still there. So I'm not saying that America is holier than thou. I'm proud to be an American. I really am. I thank God every day for it. But the rest of the world would say, well, that's hypocritical, that they can do this. They can destroy a country, topple the regime, occupy 22 years later, and still, you know, figure that they can pass judgment on another country's actions. It's not fair. We should not be the judge, jury, and the executioner is the bottom line. And I think that's the model that they're trying to go far away from. And that is that, yes, China may have a very significant role in all of this, but by putting the vaults all around the world in different countries with instant auditing on a blockchain network, you are in as trustful as you can possibly be in a system that isn't controlled by one player, even if one player is slightly more dominant in things than others. If all the gold was held in Shanghai and the Chinese control it, yeah, you know, what does that mean? But you have it in 20 vaults around the world. and everyone puts gold in each one of the vaults, you now have something truly distributed that would keep that from happening.
One of the things that's been disturbing for our viewers over the past decade at least is this notion that you have to try to kind of figure things out about what's really going on in the world. You don't just get told, look, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
And yet here you've got, it's going to be pretty soon, the majority of the world's population represented by their countries participating in a system that we aren't even being really told about.
Of course.
And it's being scoffed at, it's being delegitimized, it's been silenced, it's been or scolded by Trump saying we're going to punish you if you participate or whatever.
Well, look at the stuff that you and I have talked about for 4 years now. I've talked with you more than anyone, literally in 4 years, and I thank you for that. It's been a wonderful relationship, and I hope it is another 100 years, our families. I do. But the things that I talked about with you 4 years ago, no one was saying, and I can say that no one was talking about the draining of the COMEX. I was. What's happening? The COMEX and the LBMA are being drained. No one was talking about BRICS. I was. BRICS wasn't a thing. Saudi Arabia wasn't even thinking of it. And a lot of it has happened. Not the way that I thought, all of it. Not all of it has happened, but a lot of the stuff that you and I have talked about, I called it a linear progression of events. It's happened. A lot of it has. And that's the way that it is. That's why I talked with you before about misdirection and the art of war. We live in a world where things are very competitive, and world reserve currency, investments, direction of investments, all that stuff is proprietary and private, and there is no reason that anyone worth their salt would tell the world what they're doing. So they do the opposite, or they drop crumbs, and you can see the crumbs as you continue to research it, and you have to. And this is one of the reasons that people aren't successful in investing, largely, because they don't take the time. If they spent the fraction of the amount of time researching to safeguard their money as they did making the money, they would be a whole heck of a lot more successful in preserving their funds and growing their funds, because they work so hard to put money in the bank and food on the table. They come home, they're tired. I mean, when I walked into this room today, you said, it's tiring, isn't it? I mean, yeah, it is, because we've been working hard at this show for 2 days. It's tiring. And the last thing you might want to do at that point is dig into geopolitical events and, investments. And that's what I have an advisor for, right? Let him do it. Well, that's the problem. And I think you have to do that nowadays. The world has gotten to a point where, yes, you can find the crumbs, you can see the crumbs, you got to dig to find them, but then you have to put them together and make your own. That's why, I think there's 3 sides to every coin. There's one side, there's the other side, but there's the middle, the rim. So you look at both sides of the coin and then figure out that third side. What does it mean to you? I mean, that might be the best analogy, but that's the only analogy I can give you, is that none of this will ever be easy. None of it. And by the time it's on the mainstream, which appears easy, the big people have already way positioned themselves, and they're sitting, the old adage, on the deck chair of, sipping a cocktail, watching all of this happen. You need to make these decisions before it becomes obvious. And that's what I try to do. And I haven't been right on everything, but that's really what I try to do, and try to be a little bit different in this industry by researching, finding something, tracking it, and seeing how it all plays out, and continuing to find new things. Like, a lot of people are talking about what I am with the BRICS and with the new yuan settlement into gold, but I've heard no one talk about Lavrov's comment that they're opening it up to non-BRICS nations with the exception of the pound, the euro, and the dollar. Well, to me, that's about as big as it gets, because that hits at the heart of the naysayers who say they're not big enough. Yeah, they are. If they open this up and allow, just like, for example, Switzerland was allowed to trade with the European Union with treaties, even though they never became part of the euro, it's the same thing. It's opening up trade with all of these nations, even though they're not the BRICS nations. They're trading with the BRICS nations because of this new settlement system. And if you realize that China's entire goal is this Belt Road Initiative and all of the countries within it, there's hardly a country on the Belt Road that's in the BRICS, 1 or 2. But now you've just opened it up to 75% of human population, and all of these countries in the Belt Road are being industrialized. They're underdeveloped and they're resource rich. So China brings them into the fold, and all of a sudden you have all of these people and all of this growing infrastructure that is settling outside the dollar. And instead of buying treasuries, buying commodities and gold to offset that risk of holding treasuries. It's a monstrous thing for the rest of the world and very bad for the dollar. And it's one of these things, because it's so drawn out, the little by little by little, and not the all at once, and people just dismiss it and poo-poo it. There will come that all at one moment, maybe long after we're gone. I don't know, maybe next week. I don't know. But if you don't see the little by little and the chess pieces that are being put into place, then you're not paying attention. But to your point, you got to dig. You won't find it on the evening news or on Fox News or anywhere unless you dig.
This still burns me because like Alistair MacLeod talks to us from the UK as a former banker, saying he studied currencies throughout history. He says it's always the users of the domestic users within the country. They're the last to figure it out. All the foreign users of the currency abandon it first, and they're the last ones. So here, you'd think we'd be the best informed if it's our dollar that we're talking about, and yet how many countries, 70 plus countries, can figure this out? They're all taking their official positions, and we know nothing. Of course, or as you point out, they're all have a purposeful actions that are taken to reduce dependency on the treasury bonds and replace that with dependence on the stability and neutrality of gold. Whereas we're having all the moms and pops go to their financial advisors and go, "Oh, the treasury is the gold standard," by which you make your future of your family's financial life, your livelihood of your family is based on the U.S. Treasury, and that's the stability of your portfolio. The rest of the world has already figured it out. They're making their move, and we're still got moms and pops all basing their lives based on something that's got volatility.
1,000%. Look what's happening in Japan. The problem is it's the bond market in Japan. Rates are rising. The carry trade is disappearing. Well, the same thing will be true here. Ultimately, you get Jamie Dimon come up and he said, not in so many words, that it's not a matter of when or if, it's when there's a problem with the bond market. And it's the bond market is the issue. There's a lack of demand. It's a waning demand. Ultimately, there's a problem with the bond market, and that problem would be a bond collapse, interest rate spike, and that's the reset that we've talked about, maybe differently than we anticipated. But if the bond market really collapsed and interest rates spiked considerably, stocks, bonds, real estate, the banks, the insurance companies are all in big trouble.
Well, just a client, a attendee of the show who were at the conference stopped me. Many of them stopped me and say, "Thank you, Dunnigan, we watch your show," whatever. And one today said, "There isn't a solvent bank in the country." He said, if they had to mark their bond portfolio to market, if they had to mark their corporate real estate portfolio, their corporate loan portfolios to market, if everybody had to fess up, not only no bank solvent, the country itself. I mean, that's the dirty secret that's the elephant in the room. In addition, that the rest of the world, is pivoting away to something that they can count on. Whereas we've got the people in the U.S. that aren't being told the obvious secret that's right in front of them.
Yeah, and even before it got this bad, remember, you were the one who turned me on to the video that leaked from the FDIC, where they said if we let this out to the public and they really figure out how bad it is, there'll be a run on the banks. So we can't let that happen.
Unintended consequences.
Right. Yeah. But that's the thing, and it's hard being in a position of saying this stuff continuously, where you and I are the little boys who cried wolf. But one thing I'll take solace in is a lot of the stuff that we've talked about is happening. It is, and not exactly as we drew it up, but it is. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to connect the dots. You have to dig to find the dots. I think what's happening with the BRICS nations is largely ignored, largely underestimated, and it is a catastrophic mistake. I truly do believe that. And, you got Mexico at the BRICS meeting, for goodness sake. You have countries that we've been aligned with forever that are tired of this, the way that we deal with the world. Right now, in my opinion, the one mistake President Trump has made is using the whip or the stick rather than the carrot. And I think it's a whole lot better to mend the fences that have been materially damaged over the last administration to, find some commonality. Instead, it's if you don't, then this, and tariff, and you better. At the same time, Doge comes in. They point to all of this, the savings. Congress can't get their act together and ratify it, so they come up with $80 billion in savings, which is 38 hours of spending by the U.S. government. It's nothing. We want to raise the debt ceiling again.
$5 trillion.
Yes, and we're going to have at least a $2.5 trillion deficit. So we can't get our house in order in the midst of Doge and a drive publicly to do it.
Mandate, all that.
What does the future hold for your grandkids? Think about that. And I know I can see it just in your eyes when I say that. Like, you don't like it, but that's the truth. And I think that's the part people need to be able to look past today, look past tomorrow, and look into the inevitability of mathematics and the inevitability of the damage that we have done, I think, to our image. We were once the place that everyone wanted to be. Little boys and girls around the world wanted to wear Levi's jeans and listen to U.S. music and watch Hollywood movies and come here for a better life. And largely they still do. And I'm not saying we're not the best country in the world, but what I am saying is that we've damaged our reputation. And you have to ask yourself, has it been irreparably damaged to the point where we aren't trusted? And a system that is foundationally built upon trust is in trouble if the trust has been frayed to the degree that ours has. And even in shining a light upon our fiscal irresponsibility, we still can't get our house in order. Well, that to me is kind of one of the last nails in the coffin. Like, yeah, it's time to move on, time to find a new system. And I'll say this publicly, and I don't say this very often. I said to you many times that, in fact, I don't know if I've said this at all publicly, but my feeling is this, that last administration, too stupid to be stupid. I said that to you 100 times or more. This administration, different, but almost following the same playbook, only differently performed. What I mean by that is we're doing things to aggravate people, both fiscally, monetarily, politically, geopolitically. We're aggravating people around the world. We're using coercion rather than cooperation. We're spending more than we should. We're doing things that we shouldn't do to align the world in a cooperative manner. So are they trying to force this reset? Are they trying to get us to a point where, again, the world abandons the dollar and abandons the treasury market? Is this something that they're attempting to do so they can reset the system, so they can point to those guys who have made it happen and then become more nationalized, backed by gold, all the gold that's coming in, reset the system and do something different? It makes me feel like they are doing that they realize the inevitability. Let's onshore as much as we can in terms of commodities, and we have to break this chain. And when you hear Vice President Vance saying, being the world reserve currency isn't all that it's cut out to be. And you look and actually think about Triffin's dilemma, which says you will always have a trade imbalance. Right. You will always have an eviscerated manufacturing base. How do you get away from that by being the world reserve currency? The answer is you probably don't. This far down the line, if you bring these critical manufacturing industries back, the cost goes to the moon, and the shelves become empty for a long time because we sent it over there for a reason, because of the cost. And now we're so far down the rabbit hole that how do you bring it back without creating a really a depression? I don't know how you do. And I think that's kind of the pickle that they realize they're in. If anything, I think they realize where we're at. That's why they're bringing back all the metals. That's why you're seeing the unorthodox things that are happening. But it almost makes me feel as like they realize that the end has to come. And sooner than later would probably be better to pull the Band-Aid off, reset the system, become a country that focuses on itself nationally rather than internationally. And maybe we reset the system that way. I think the bottom line is that there is a reset, and it's underway slowly. Right now, I think we're in the midst of a reset. How it all plays out, I guess only time will tell, but I not how I would do it. I wouldn't do it the way he's doing it. I would do it completely different. But let's just simply say that I'm not convinced that it's going to be smooth sailing over the next couple of years into this administration.
Yeah, well, again, Alistair MacLeod, a student of monetary history, says that this is really rhyming with the Smoot-Hawley Act back right before the Great Depression. It's like when you already have the economy struggling, then to try to solve that by slapping on tariff barriers, which are really sanctions and that sort of thing, and end up causing a huge slowdown in international trade at the moment when your economy is already fragile, can be a thing that just drives you right into the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And we used to interview Wayne Jett, author of The Fruits of Graft, Great Depressions Then and Now. He talked about people hold up FDR on a pillar and say, wow, he really got us through a tough time and all this stuff. Well, not to mention, how he took away people's gold and tried anyway to take away people's gold. But Wayne Jett documented how the many ways that FDR's policies actually worsened, lengthened, and deepened the Great Depression. And if you wanted to make something that maybe could have gotten over in 5 years, take 15 or 20 years, you would have done it the way FDR did it. So it's very concerning to see that those same playbooks of Hoover, who did the tariff, who signed off on the tariffs, and now bringing back tariffs again.
I don't know do you know what interest rates were back then?
No, I don't.
Neither do I. I need to figure that out. But it makes me wonder what would happen to the bond market if the markets absolutely, totally collapse. I don't know. I'm going to have to research it.
Well, we've been told by Greg Manarino that it's going to happen likely in the other order, that the bond market, as you mentioned earlier, the bond market will become under such irreparable
Then it collapses the stock
It'll
market.
pull down everything
Yes,
else.
and that's probably...
Because it's the tail wagging the dog. The bond market is enormous compared to
Right.
the equity market.
Right. I mean, that's probably how it will happen. And you can already kind of see it. And the Fed had to come in 3 weeks ago and buy $48 billion worth of 3, 10, and 30-year treasuries because there's not enough demand. The Treasury has to come in 2 weeks in a row and buy back $10 billion worth of longer maturity treasuries because there's no demand for it. That's the beginning of what we're talking about, an exodus out of the bond market, which would then bring everything down with it as rates go higher.
And we're seeing it in other venues as well. People on the streets and our viewers will confirm that there are still some hot spots of seller's market for real estate in the country. We know there are some, but many of those that were hot spots,
here.
like Florida, have now there's been a glut of supply, and people who are trying to sell their homes, it's just like nothing moving.
Because the interest rates are too high, lending standards are too high. Banks don't want to make loans. They'd rather give their money to the Federal Reserve and the overnight lending and the reserve account there, and make the federal funds rate 4.5% or whatever, without the risk of giving it to you for a mortgage or a home equity loan or whatever it is. And so the lending standards have gotten higher, the rates have gotten higher.
And according to Michael Pinto, the affordability is the worst it's ever been. So you've got this whole generation, the next generation, who can't afford to get into the starter homes. So if people aren't buying the starter homes, then the moms and pops are trying to sell those so that they can move either up or off into, retirement housing, and they can't get out. So people can't sell their homes.
And they would be in the best positions of any, because if they're selling, they probably own their house if they've been in there forever.
Right.
Try and get a mortgage and move laterally or even downsize a bit, you're going to end up, because the cost of money is 2.5 times higher than it was a few years ago, nearly 7% versus 3%. Almost, that distorts everything. Some people can't move just because rates are so high, and other people can't move because they can't move into what they want to move into, because even to downsize and save money, you're paying the same or more because of the cost of money.
And besides the fact that you can't find a buyer for your home at these prices. That's where I was getting at. You were saying, we were talking about when there's a lack of demand for the bonds, then the rates will go up there, making things even more unaffordable. They're already breaking the real estate market. We've already got zombie companies who can't afford to refinance their corporate debt at these rates. You've talked to us about companies that have had to walk away from their headquarters because they can't afford to. There's nobody who wants to go in and work in some of those, but the rates to refinance those loans, those commercial loans, they can't afford it at the current rates. So everything's pointing to this kind of unacknowledged struggle that is likely to lead to additional weakness in the bond auctions and volatility in the bonds. Now, the bonds have been the stalwart, the underpinning, the thing you go to for strength of a portfolio. We've talked about how pensions, insurance companies, retirements have been based on those as well. So it's like a house of cards that's built on top of something that's no longer the bedrock that it was supposed to be.
Right.
for ordinary moms and pops that want to take care of their family, you've suggested that they look into what the rest of the world is doing, for one, and what's traditionally been traditional wisdom since the beginning of time until this last grand experiment. That's the last couple of generations in our country. And that's one asset class, gold and silver, that don't require government actions to prop them up, and they're outside the bank, and so people who are hanging on to significant savings in banks and something.
Someone asked me today, where else could I put my money that's good value? And I was thinking about it, easy answer is farmland, but farmland's expensive still, just like the residential real estate. And it dawned on me that over the last 20 years, through suppression of interest rates, the only asset class, it seems to me, that was held down were precious metals, because it's the canary in the mine shaft. And we've talked a lot about why perhaps the military-industrial complex, in my opinion, was holding down silver. We know about Gibson's paradox, why they would hold down gold, the inverse relationship between it and real interest rates. But in all of that time in suppressing interest rates, the byproduct was distortions in asset prices, such as real estate, such as bonds, such as stocks. Everything went way up. Greatest bull market ever, because we messed with Mother Nature. So when you try and think of where is there good value, well, we just said the real estate market's not, the bond market not, stock market. It's interesting, when you look at the stock market, you have the largest percentage of retail buyers, mom and pop, in the market than ever before, including at the dot-com bubble. It's like 53, 54% of all stock trades is retail-based mom and pop. At the same time, since the beginning of the year, you're seeing every single week institutional sellers sell. Over $2 billion a week since the beginning of June, average selling. The insiders, six sells for one buy. Look at the Buffetts, the Bezos, the Jamie Dimons. They're all selling. So the insiders have the lowest. They're selling out of equities, and they're buying commodities, because who's standing for delivery for $89 billion worth of gold since the beginning of the year? $89 billion with a B has come into COMEX. Who's standing for delivery for that? So the insiders are moving to commodities and selling equities at the same time that the retail public has been shy to come into this market, but is at all-time records in equities. What could possibly go wrong? And I'm thinking to myself, where else can you put money where there's value? Well, gold and silver got beat up so bad when everything else went so high. I'll ask you, why did they beat up gold and silver is the bigger question, because it signifies something deeper. And why are we seeing massive deliveries across the globe, and central bank buying that continues to increase, and now the United States joining in on the massive influx of gold and silver? Why? And to me, you say this and think, yeah, right, Andy, you own a gold company. Yeah, I do. But I don't know where else I would put my money. I can tell you right now, I have a managed account with Sprott, out of my respect to Rick Rule when he was there, for all of the years that he sent me his client's business. That was the least I could do. I don't even know. Eric Angeli is a great guy. I don't even know exactly what stocks he does, but I trust them. I have gold and silver. I own a metals company. I have no debt. And the only other place that I put my money, period, is in 4-week duration or less U.S. Treasuries. I don't know where else to put it. And I'm not the poster child for Finance 101. So yes, Dunnigan, buying gold and silver to me has never been more important. Ever, never, never. Regardless if you buy it from Miles Franklin or not, I would just simply say to you, it's never been more important.
And I want to add one more thing to what you just said, and that is that a lot of the retirement age folks that we talk with in our community, and I'm meeting with a bunch of them at a job fair there on Saturday, they are talking about, well, why buy gold? Because it's at an all-time high. That you don't want to buy things when they're at a high. David Morgan was just on our channel, the Silver Guru. Many people are familiar with David. He shows a chart of the Dow or the S&P 500 versus gold ounces, and it's basically been in a decline since the year 2000. So everybody thinks, oh, the stock market is flying high, and then they think, well, then I should chase that. But if gold's at an all-time nominal high against the dollar, then they think, oh, that's too rich. I'll wait till it looks cheap again before I consider that. So it's like gold is darned if you do, it's darned if you don't. But the interesting thing is that in inflation adjusted, in other words, if you just look at it, gold as a constant, and price the Dow in gold, it hasn't. 2000 was the peak, and has never regained the peak.
Yeah, in 1980 it was 1-to-1. 1 ounce for the Dow. And what is it right now? What's the Dow at? 40 what? Let me do a little math real quick. The Dow Jones is at today 44,000 divided by 3,300. So, boy, I'm having, here we go. 44,000 divided by 3,300. 44,000 divided by 3,300. 13.33 ounces. It was 1-to-1 in 1980. So yeah, yes, it's at, gold is close to an all-time high in nominal terms, but nowhere near an all-time high in its relation to Dow stocks. And, that would certainly preclude anyone from buying real estate or stocks at this juncture. And, I think it's important to understand that what is the dollar worth today? In relation to so many things, it's the dollar is massively losing value, and so the continual printing of dollars is masking as well the real value, because inflation is masked, the CPI is masked, and I don't trust any of that, to be honest with you. I think it's better to look at it in terms of gold versus Dow than what the dollar price is.
This is a chart of the Dow Jones Industrial Average against ounces of gold. So it's the Dow measured ounces of gold. And you took us back to 1980, way back on the bottom left corner, the 1-to-1 down there at 1-to-1. Then it peaked. You can see the year 00. So that's the year 2000, right up here at like 42 or 43 times for ounces of gold would buy the Dow at the peak. And then now, since then, it's been riding this decaying trend down, and it has never even got close to, meaning right now we're like at 13.5 roughly ounces of gold to own the Dow. So people feel that they're doing well in the stock market because they see their things going down, but measured in gold, which is the true measure, the stock market has never regained its peak from the year 2000. It's been 2.5 decades.
If you did the same thing with Bitcoin, you'd see a very interesting trend, and that is that Bitcoin peaked against gold a year or two ago, and it's the same thing as Bitcoin. People, it's done very well, of course, but in terms of gold, not as well as one would think. So maybe using the dollar as the wrong barometer, I guess, is the moral of the story. But as Chris Powell, I don't know if you've ever had Chris on your show before, but I always say that, Chris Powell, Bill Murphy, any one of us who own gold owe him and GATA a debt of gratitude. And Chris, if you're listening, thank you. But as he says, there are no free markets anymore, just manipulations. And the same thing is true with the value of the dollar. It's manipulated, as is the statistics by which we gauge inflation. So that's a more true measure of the value of the dollar, the value of gold, the value of a Dow, when you measure it against something that isn't just dollars. Measure it against gold, measure the Dow against gold, measure Bitcoin against gold, measure the S&P against gold, and you'll have a better value, a better idea of what true value is.
Before we wrap, I want to give a chance for you to take a look at the weekly specials. And this is one that you've told us how hard these are to get. So,
well, the U.S. Mint hasn't made Platinum Eagles for going on 3 years. I don't believe they made them for the last 2. They're not making them this year, and I don't think they're going to make them next year. I love the Platinum American Eagle, but you can see how high premiums are. This is what real supply and demand look like, where there isn't a new incoming supply and demand for platinum has been growing as the price has been rising. This should be as good or better than anywhere in North America. At $249 over spot for backdate Platinum Eagles, and everything's backdate. They don't make 25s. It's my favorite choice, period. And for platinum, the rest of the platinum complex is very difficult to come by. The Lady Fortuna PAMP Veriscan bars. These are 99 over spot. Now, again, it's important to understand why they're more expensive. And you look at some of the competitors, they're at $150 or so over spot on the Veriscan bars. The Veriscan bars have a serial number or a hologram on the back of the PAMP, that blue PAMP case that you see the front of there. On the back, there is something that you type in or scan that will validate its authenticity. And it's a security feature. So as far as bars are concerned, they are the class of the industry. The the Pam Swiss Veriscan. So they make Pam Swiss bars that are not Veriscan, that are $20+ less money. These, you could argue, peace of mind, it's worth it, and they'll be, again, best price in the country as far as I know.
And your shocker on junk silver?
Yeah, I've been telling you that it's as good of a deal as I've seen anywhere. So I instructed my operations to buy everything that wasn't nailed down. And we bought a lot, millions of dollars worth we have in stock. And this right here, at spot price for constitutional silver, it's as good of a deal as you will ever find ever in silver, ever. In fact, in 35 years, I've never seen a better deal than that. And, you know, what were premiums 3 years ago? 12, 13, 14, 15 bucks over
We were buying it back at more than $9 over.
Yeah, so, you know, this is as good as it gets done again. And
U.S. Mint,
yes,
lineage,
yes,
face value marking, legal tender status.
yes. And there's 0.715 ounces of pure silver for every dollar face value. Any way that you can make it, 4 quarters, 10 dimes, 5 dimes, 2 quarters, a half dollar and 2 quarters. You know, any way you can make a dollar in dimes, quarters, or half dollars minted prior to 65 would be 0.715 ounces of pure silver. 1,000 face would be 715 ounces.
Thanks for running through those specials, and thanks for taking the time away from the show floor to come in.
It's good to get out.
Symposium.
Yeah, I'm gonna hide. I might hide in the closet here for the rest of the day, take a nap when no one's looking.
It's very intense, folks. We miss every one of you who aren't here. We've seen a lot of you who are, so thanks for those who attended. And some of those we won't even know because you're attending virtually from home. That's awesome. And if you haven't signed up yet for the Rural Symposium, even though we're in the middle of it right now, you can still get access to all the recordings for a year if you still sign up. Look in the description of this video for a link, and you'll get in. And just Andy, thanks for being here for the
next
market
week.
update.
You got it, my man.
Absolutely.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Take care.
And happy birthday to my son, Josh.
Happy birthday, Josh. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Take care.
Hi, Mom.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for July 8th through July 15th, 2025, while supplies last. First this week, we have 90% constitutional junk silver at spot price. That's right, no premium at all, just spot. Next, backdated 1-ounce platinum eagles are only $249 over spot. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.